somebody sent me a story that was released in June, but I missed it at the time, and I think it's worth bringing up now because it so perfectly demonstrates the military-industrial complex and how it functions. So the Afghanistan Reconstruction Report uncovered many things. For example, something we did talk about on the show when it first came out, there was a $34 million base that we built in a certain region of Afghanistan, and then we never used it, and nobody's using it. So just $34 million completely wasted. Honestly, it would have went to better use if you gave some Americans $100 bills to wipe their ass with. That's how wasted this was. Also, there were hospitals that we built and were never used. And the list goes on and on of the many ways in which we fucked up the Reconstruction and we're just blowing through tax dollars. But get this. U.S. taxpayers also spent $3 million on boats for Afghanistan. Now, why is that odd? Afghanistan is landlocked. It has no water. If that's not the perfect example of the military-industrial complex at its worst, I don't know what is. Now, they fire back and they say, the government says, well, yes and no, sure it's landlocked, sure there's no water, but there's this river or something on one of the borders with Uzbekistan, maybe, and our idea was we stop people over there if they're doing bad stuff or whatever. Just a weak argument, and honestly, the real rebuttal of that argument is the Uzbeks actually have, is that how you say it, Uzbeks? Uzbekis? I feel like Herman Cain when he did that thing. Uzbekistan. So what they have is they already have boats. They're actually patrolling that particular region, and guess who pays for those boats also, might I add? The U.S. taxpayer. So this really was just totally wasted money, but it gets better. Not a single boat actually arrived in Afghanistan. So this was approved. The boats were produced, Afghanistan has no water, and the boats are just sitting in a warehouse in Virginia right now. There are no words for how pissed off everybody in America should be. And to add insult on top of injury, and a whipped cream and cherry on top of idiocy, the government spent $375,000 per boat when the market value of those boats, $50,000. Make it stop. Make the pain stop. When you look, nobody should ever bring up the idea of fiscal responsibility without first taking a hatchet to the military budget. 57% of discretionary spending is military spending. We left $10 billion with a B, $10 billion behind in Iraq in all different kinds of weapons. Big weapons, small weapons, anti-aircraft missiles, Humvees, machine guns, you name it. $10 billion we left behind in Iraq. And then you know what happened? It's not even just that, hey, we wasted it and we left it there, and then people in Iraq, turned it into scrap metal and then used it to get rich. No, that's not the only thing that happened. ISIS ended up using those weapons. So we totally wasted U.S. tax dollars. We should have brought those things home in the first place to use them in the next conflict, but what's the reality? Oh, well, Raytheon and Boeing and KBR and the rest of them, they can't make more tanks and more useless boats and more anti-aircraft missiles and more F-35s if we reuse the stuff we already built. You got to keep this military-industrial complex system going. You have to keep making people rich. So that's the nefarious angle to the story. But look, it shows you that I don't know of any other interpretation. That's why this story is so interesting. There's no, like for other things, you could sort of make a surface argument in defense of it, like when we built the base and then nobody ever used the $34 million base because the idea was, well, we wanted to end the war and we were drawing down the troops, so it's good that we built the base thinking we would use it, but then we changed policy direction. Wonderful. So there's at least an argument against that. For the boats, there is no argument. For the boats, it appears to be cut and dry, right in front of your face, that this was a deal created through corruption. The same way, might I add, that we have Abrams tanks sitting in the middle of the desert in Nevada collecting dust. Meanwhile, the Pentagon said, we don't need any more tanks, we're okay, don't do the contract. But Congress approved it because they, of course, all take money from the companies that make the tanks. So this is the way the U.S. system works today, and when you read the final result and you go through it, anybody would get mad. Whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, liberal, conservative, fascist, communist, I don't give a fuck what you are. When you read that we're wasting money in this way, the dumbest shit you've ever heard, it makes you want to do some sort of a revolution.